Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good, from science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and I'm going to be solo this week. Harry's got some stuff going on, and Zach's busy doing Zach things. So you got me, and but it'll be great because this is Bufnagle the podcast, where we have all sorts of exciting things and the world's greatest listeners. So we appreciate you being there. I just want to tell you, thank you before we start. Thank you for making us a global top 10% podcast. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, then you can subscribe and you can actually take that acknowledgement onto yourself. That would be great. That'd be wonderful. Tell a friend to listen and you will get a free episode. And remember, you can send us questions or comments or complaints or whatever you want at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. And we answer your questions kind of like God answers prayers. Sometimes it may be what you want, and sometimes, you'll get your answer later. So that's how that works. So if you could leave us a 5-star review, that would be a wonderful thing too. And before we get started, we gotta give a shout out here to our friends at BlendJet. Remember, if you're craving a smoothie, then what you really need is something to make the smoothies in. And smoothies are great for you because you can eat healthy and it's fun and fruity and easy to drink. But what you need is a blender for that. And you need a BlendJet 2. A BlendJet 2 is a portable blender, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita at the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. BlendJet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. It lasts for 15 or more blends and charges quickly via USB-C. Best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap, and you are good to go. They have a zillion colors and styles and patterns and things for you to do. And I think if you talk to them nice, you probably figure out how to get the Bufnagle logo on your BlendJet. That'd be kind of a cool thing. So the real question for you guys at this point is, what are you waiting for? Go to the blendjet.com link in the description and grab yours today. Be sure to use the promo code Bufnagle to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of the BlendJet 2. They guarantee you will love it or your money back. Blend anytime, anywhere with BlendJet 2 portable blender. Go to the blendjet.com link in the description and use the code Bufnagle to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Shop today and get the best deal ever. All right, so this week we're talking about Hamlet, and in particular, we're going to take a line from Hamlet that seems to me to be misunderstood by a lot of people, and it's a little bit subtle to figure out why it's misunderstood. But once you see it, then you're like, well, that changes everything, and well, isn't that the point of a good story, right? Is to change how you view the world once you get all the information. So I think a lot of people read this line, they read it and they get the exact opposite meaning of what it really says, because the context matters a whole lot here. So I first heard this on the Andrew Klavan show, and I was like, man, I got to look this up myself. So I went and I've reread Hamlet here and found the line in question and the story leading up to that. And so I want to get let's walk you through there and see where the story goes. So first the backstory for Hamlet. So the short version of Hamlet goes like this. It says the king dies, then there's like a story with stuff happening, and then at the end everybody dies because it's a tragedy, and that's how those things go. But my complete works of Shakespeare says it like this. You got the king. You get he's called Old Hamlet, and he has died, and he's been succeeded by his brother. And the new king has also married his widow. The widow's name is Gertrude. So Gertrude is the widowed queen. Hamlet is Gertrude's son. And he is distressed by his father's death. He's saddened by that, but more than that, probably the hasty remarriage of his mother to his uncle. That is not that doesn't sit well with him. And then his father's ghost appears to Hamlet and to some other guys, and tells Hamlet that to avenge his murder. He needs to. He admits that he was killed by his brother. So Hamlet's a little upset about that, and Hamlet vows revenge. And to cover his intentions, he feigns madness. In this way, it allows him to get away with all sorts of kind of telling half truths and half lies and being deceitful and all that stuff by pretending he is mad. Polonius, he's the counselor to the court. His daughter Ophelia is all but betrothed to Hamlet. She is, they're an item, I guess we would say. Polonius believes that the madness is a consequence of his love for his daughter Ophelia, and then Hamlet encounters Ophelia and rejects her in the presence of Polonius to start this deception. And then some actors arrive, and Hamlet asks them to perform a play to make it to entice the king to admit his guilt. And then all sorts of, I guess, the wheels come off. Hamlet's suspicions get confirmed by after the play, and he visits his mother and reviles her for her hasty marriage, and he accidentally kills Polonius, who happens to be hiding in the chamber. Right, so don't hide in the chamber. There's a lesson there. The king then sends Hamlet to England to plan to have him murdered there. Right, send him out and put a hit out on him. Laertes, Polonius' son, demands revenge for his father's death, and his sister Ophelia, maddened by grief, has drowned. So now we've lost Polonius and we've lost Ophelia. Hamlet comes back from England, confronts Laertes at her funeral, and the king, meanwhile, has plotted with Laertes to kill Hamlet in a fencing match in which Laertes will have a poisoned sword. So everybody's being sneaky and conniving, and it's going to result in a problem here. The plot miscarries. Laertes dies. Gertrude drinks from a poisoned cup that was intended for Hamlet. She dies. Hamlet gets wounded by the poisoned sword. He kills the king. The king dies. Hamlet dies. And young Fortinbras of Norway comes in and takes the crown and the throne of Denmark. So it's a disaster. Here's the line, okay? Here's the line that happens in Act 2, Scene 2. Hamlet says, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." And I've heard this said in commentary. Somebody will say, "Well, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so," and they use it as this kind of defense. The defense that there's nothing, everything's subjective, right? Everything it comes out of your culture, and you can confirm that this is what people think by going to the interwebs. Okay, so here's one. Here's a blog, I guess, called The Musing Mind, and this guy says, "Why did William Shakespeare? What did he mean when he penned the following sentence? There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Now, to me, it's interesting because Shakespeare didn't say that. Hamlet said that. Okay, Shakespeare had Hamlet say that. So I don't, you could have, you can't say that Shakespeare said that. That's not accurate. Hamlet said that, and he said it in a certain context that we're going to get to here in a little bit. All right, and it says the line occurs in the play, Hamlet in exchange with characters Guildenstern and Rosencrantz. At the time of the quote, Hamlet has called the country of Denmark a prison, and the three are in disagreement about whether or not Denmark is really a prison. Hamlet believes it is so, while the other two disagree. Okay, that's the context. And this guy says, and then he starts getting very, very philosophical about this. For millennia, philosophers have repeated the same wisdom in different words with the hope of empowering us with wisdom that can help us live more peaceful, happier, fulfilled lives. Okay, pass the syrup, please. All right, the quote, "Ignorance is bliss," is also apt as a synonymous quote to Shakespeare's. Well, I don't think that's quite right. Okay, but the modern philosopher Eckhart Tolle shares an anecdote that talks about whether good or bad can really be labeled as shuts. And he tells this little story about, we had this book when I was a kid called That's Good, That's Bad. And I don't remember a lot about it, except there was I think it was set like in the jungles of India. And there was a little boy, and there was a tiger, and there was things like, the boy got lost in the wood, and the tiger says, well, that's bad. And the boy says, no, it's good because I get to play by myself. And then he finds a stream that he can't cross, and the tiger says, that's bad. And the boy says, no, that's good because I get to swim the river. And then the boy finds a sandwich to eat, and the tiger says, well, that's good. And the boy says, no, it's bad because I don't like turkey on rye or whatever. I mean, so it's everything goes back and forth, and whether it's good or whether it's bad, and it all changes with context. Okay. So, and that can be true that there are certain things like that change. And this guy on the web says human society invented labels with helpful intentions. I just can't believe I'm reading this to you guys. Establishing an understanding of what is helpful and not helpful to society helped establish laws, norms, values, and mores that were aimed at reducing the occurrence of what we commonly label. Reducing the occurrences of what we commonly label as good or bad. Well, I don't think that's true. We try to get rid of bad. We try to promote good. But anyway, I think I get what he's saying. He's saying everything is subjective based on culture. Okay, that's what this guy says. And he says that's what Shakespeare meant. Here's another guy that he's a psychologist, and he says that it has to do with like whether you have, we've all had different events in our lives, and sometimes they're good or bad, but that pulls our it's all about emotions, whether your emotions feel one way or the other. And okay, that's the psychologist approach. And then there's this one takes the cake. It's the detailed answer. What's the meaning? And this guy says, this is really funny. This feels to me like I don't know. It feels like the kind of thing I would have wanted to write if I wanted to write lots of stuff to get a good grade in high school. When Hamlet says there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so, he is essentially suggesting that objective reality doesn't inherently possess qualities of goodness or badness. Instead, it is a human perception and interpretation that imbues events, objects, and situations with moral value. This viewpoint aligns with a form of relativism, which posits that moral judgments are not universally inherent, but rather shaped by cultural, societal, and personal perspectives. Right? Well, opinions. I'll give you that. Opinions are all thinking, but that's not what the statement says. He says there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So. This guy goes on further. Hamlet's statements also underscore his complex psychological state. Okay, he's grasping here. He is grappling with intense emotions, including grief over his father's death, sense of his betrayal by his mother's hasty marriage. Moreover, Hamlet is deeply troubled by the moral implications of avenging his father's death, which involved taking another life. Well, yeah, I think he's doing all that, but there's not a lot of evidence in the poem that he's that shook up about that. He's going to do what he needs to do. All right, and then. Furthermore, this line encapsulates Hamlet's internal conflict and his wavering mental state. He is torn between his desire for revenge and his introspective nature, causing him to question the foundations of human morality. No, I don't think so. I think he was just kind of goofing around with his friends. But he said this, okay? He said, in response to whether or not Denmark's a prison, he said, I don't think so. And he said, why? It is none to you, for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it's a prison. So what does it exactly say in the text? Okay, so let's look at that. All right, so here, this is line 236 in Act 2, Scene 2. Hamlet says, what have you, my good friends, deserved at the hands of fortune that she sends you to prison hither? And Guildenstern says, prison, my lord? And Hamlet replies, Denmark's a prison. Rosencrantz says, then is the world one? So the world is one as well, is what he says. Hamlet says, a goodly one, in which there are many confines, wars, and dungeons, Denmark being one of the worst. Rosencrantz says, we think not so, my lord. Hamlet says, why? Then 'tis none to you, for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it is a prison. Okay, now what's important to remember here is this is part of a broader conversation, and Hamlet's making an argument of why he doesn't like Denmark. And I suppose that's a fair assessment that he's making, that's a component of his argument, that this is an opinion, all right? And therefore, I should be allowed to say that Denmark's a prison. But there's another thing to keep in mind, right? And that this is fundamentally important. This is the point here, is that at this point in the play, Hamlet has already been visited by the ghost telling him to avenge the murder. All right. And Hamlet's plan for avenging the murder is to feign madness. It's important that you understand that he is feigning madness. And in Act 2, Scene 2, Hamlet is as nutty as they come. He's not acting like he is earlier in Act 1. He's not acting. I guess I would call him sad and dour with his father's death and his mother's hasty remarriage. But after the ghost shows up and tells him to avenge his death, and Hamlet comes up with this scheme, and now he's just a nutcase, man. He's not acting rightly, okay? And the others are arguing about what's the cause of the madness. Is it grief for his father that's causing his madness? Is it dismay at his mother's overly rapid remarry to Hamlet's uncle that is causing it? Or is he simply mad in love with Ophelia? Right? So that's the question of why is he mad? But there's no question that he is completely loopy at this point. So the statement that he makes with regard to there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's the statement of a madman. That is part of his, that statement, that line of reasoning, that argument is part of his composition of, I want you to see me as not sane. That is not a true statement. Okay. Of course, that's a lunacy statement. There are things that are good or bad. Good and bad are not just a realm of what you think is good or bad. There are universal truths, and those are not part of subjective morality. Honor, truth, love, courage, justice. All right, you know these things. We talk about them all the time. These are components of virtue. We talk about them all the time, and these are constants regardless of the direction that the wind may be blowing at the moment in the culture that you live in. People like to argue that these concepts are subjective. Well, you have your good and bad, and I have my good and bad. But there are some goods and there's some bads that are universal. There are truths that are universal. There's something in the nature of kicking a puppy and bilking a widow out of her retirement savings that both point to this concept of injustice, and that is a bad thing. Slavery is a wrong thing. It is in that same bucket. It's not just, it is a wrong thing, even if everybody's doing it. And everybody did that around the planet for millennia, up until very recently. And it's still going on, of course. Let's keep that in mind, right? And it's still wrong. That's a wrong, regardless of whether or not the culture thinks it's right. And what's difficult is when you live in a world that is surrounded, that swims in this this water of something that is not right. It's hard to see how that it is not right. It's hard to see. And you look how long it took to abolish slavery in the West. It took a long, long, long time. It's hard when everybody around you is doing it. There are things that are happening now in our societies that are not right. And people continue to do them because it's really hard to not do them. And it's hard to see that they're wrong. But we have to work on that. There are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. Don't kill innocent people. That's one of those things. Don't take other people's money or stuff. Honor your mother and father. Pay your bills. Hold the door for the old lady. Push in your chair, right? These are things that you should do. These are universal goods. These are things that are good or bad. The things that we do are good and the things we don't do are bad. Not because we think them. They're good or bad because they are part of a fundamental nature of good or bad. And we actually have a sense to help us understand what that nature is, okay? Our eyes detect visible light. Our ears detect compression waves in the air. Our nose and our tongue detect chemical substances and convert them into taste and smell. And our sense for determining good and bad is our conscience. Our conscience points us to what is good and to what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. It points us in the direction that we ought to go. And the direction we ought to go is following the good. So just as a musician trains his hearing to be able to detect pitch, to be able to understand music, so too you must train your conscience to detect and understand what is good and what is bad. Some things are very obviously truly good or truly bad. They're very easy to see, and other things maybe it's more subtle. You may think that there are extenuating circumstances. How do I deal with that sort of thing? What do I do in the situation of two goods and or two evils? How do I deal with that? And those are lessons that you can learn, but you can train your conscience to help you get in that direction, just like you train your hearing, or you work on your eyesight, or you can train your sense of taste and smell. So today's lesson is to train your conscience, to learn the truth about things that are universal truths, those truths about which thinking does not make it so. That's the goal. And that doesn't come, you can say that's those components, I guess, are in the heart of every man, they say. But that doesn't mean that it's always easy to apply them. There are situations where it may be difficult, and you have to figure out what to do. I mean, what's Hamlet going to do? Well, we will find out as we continue to read the poem. But he's supposed to avenge his father's death, but he doesn't want to kill somebody. So how do we deal with that? So those are things that are in conflict. We know what happens in the story. They all die because it's a tragedy from Shakespeare. But there are things that are good and bad, and it's not thinking that makes them so. So next time somebody tells you that, tell them, no, that's the statement of a madman. And remember always to seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure of life.